Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. This is another edition of LinkedIn Live Industry Insights from Veeam. Our good colleague Jason Buffington is getting a little time off for good behavior, and we are very happy to bring in from the product strategy team in the office of the CTO here at Veeam, Andrew Zalesko, who has just recently, as in the last business day, celebrated 9 years at Veeam Software. Welcome, Andrew.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. Indeed, it was an interesting journey, and I'm looking forward to have another 9 or even more years with Veeam. So it would be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so when I do mention, wherever you're tuning in from, if you haven't seen this in a while or this is your first LinkedIn live stream, please do give a shout out in the LinkedIn live comments where you're tuning in from. We do have a world map that we like to bring up. Andrew, or AZ, as we sometimes nickname his first and last name, joining us from Russia. We do have a communications expert who is monitoring any questions and comments you may have, as well as when you mention where you're tuning in from. They're over in Romania. I am coming to you from, we already have at least one other country coming in as well. Thank you for that. Our producers in Georgia. I'm in Colorado, where we're gearing up for some more snow, it looks like, before we get into spring. So we wanted to chat, AZ, about the cloud. Now, the cloud is obviously an expansive topic, but we're going to do something a little bit different in this live stream. A lot of this has been Jason and myself talking about survey data, global data that we've done at Veeam Software through third-party people about how people are thinking about the cloud, how they might want to exploit the cloud in the future. But we thought this might be kind of an interesting discussion point to say, okay, let's bring in an expert to help talk through what does Veeam actually do as it relates to the cloud. And I know you've got a great slide from a high level to talk through how we can think about the various ways that Veeam supports cloud capabilities.
Yeah, I do have that slide. It's Veeam capabilities for cloud journey. And then, since you mentioned that I'm already 9 years at the company, I do remember the time when we couldn't even spell the word cloud. And so we didn't have any product, any feature. There was nothing on our roadmap about cloud. And then, it wasn't even a good trend in the industry. But then I had a question because I was thinking how we would, prepare for this session today. And then I was thinking about Veeam history and all the things and how we started that journey. And so I had a question for you, Dave, and I'm going to ask it. So what do you think we had back in the days? What was the first cloud thing that we had as a company, product or feature, something like that?
When I think back, Cloud Connect is still with us, but that was a big thing at one point in time to easily have natively built into your on-prem backup software this capability to flex out to other service providers of your own choosing. But thinking what predates that, I don't think it was the Veeam powered network, so I don't think it was a networking solution or capability. What was it?
No, there was something else. So we had a concept of, back in the days, it was like just a bunch of products. It's not like, the whole portfolio that we have these days. But then most of all, we had Veeam backup and replication. And since I'm joined as a support technician, so everyone was calling and, asking about Veeam backup and replication. And some of the time, whenever someone was calling and asking about Veeam One, we were excited because, there is someone else using like other products. But then, anyways, we had a concept of Veeam Backup and Replication Cloud Edition, and I might be wrong here, but I believe that was 6.5 version when we had this separate edition. And theoretically speaking, people could have already kind of send the backups into the cloud using the cloud storage over there. Although I do not think that actually worked, and we have to be honest about that. But anyways, that make us, think about what's the other things that we can do for a cloud. And then Cloud Connect idea was kind of around the corner. And so a couple of years later, I would say we came up with Cloud Connect, which was a big success. And then if you come back to that, the slide about cloud journey, it's one of the things that we have for cloud at the moment. And this is one of the really coolest technologies that I think we have. But then other than, Cloud Connect technology, which we can talk for hours or for ages maybe, is there anything that you particularly like on that slide? Maybe something, about recovery to cloud or something else?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat and give you two things I think are really cool. And Andrew, I like how we've got multiple different capabilities. So I always like to say, cloud is many things. It's not one thing. And even within an organization, you can have different business units or different workloads, right, that need to interact with the cloud in different ways. But the one thing that I always like, in addition to that choice and flexibility, is the notion of the portable workload capability, meaning we can take that encapsulated workload, move it from on-prem to a cloud. Maybe let's call that cloud A. Over time, you could move or translate from cloud A to cloud B, or even back again. There's actually valid reasons to repatriate data. So I guess if I had to sum it up, it would be flexibility would be the one word, flexibility of the workloads you protect, but also flexibility in how you can move that data around.
Yeah, I think this is a great story that we're talking about here, because data, I would use the word portability, because we were thinking about the way how people can migrate workloads to the cloud. And, back in the days, we created direct recovery to Azure, because we started from Azure, and then it wasn't even direct recovery to Azure, because we were aiming simple kind of a migration tool, or even, the files exchange with the cloud sort of thing. And then we realized that, okay, for some of the people, they would prefer to already start the cloud journey and prefer to migrate the data over there. But then immediately we were thinking about, what if something goes wrong with the cloud, or what if they need to be compliant or anything else, meaning to bring the data back to on-premises, to the data center that they run. And so this is kind of the portability, the arrows going in both of the directions, from on-premises to the cloud, to data center, whatever that they have, and vice versa. And so this is a very powerful story that we have, full data portability. I would always pick that. And then I think we could come kind of to the data management and moving to the cloud object storage, because it's another huge topic these days. And yes. Then I know we have a slide about scale out backup repository and anything. And I'm pretty sure that you were an analyst, and kind of, back in the days when we invented a scale out backup repository, and you heard from us about it. So what was what was your reaction about this technology? Did you see it coming to this sophisticated scenarios we have these days?
So, I have rich Veeam history going back to even when Veeam, before becoming generally available in the backup world. And I met the co-founder who came up after one of my presentations, gave me his card and said, we're getting ready to become generally available to protect VMware. And I remember thinking, well, I hope that works out well for you. And then later on, many years later on, heard about this notion of scale-up backup repository. And at the time, early on, it sounded like kind of an interesting idea. If you look over on the left-hand side, I mean, the interesting idea there was, well, what if you could stitch together various types of storage capabilities you already have? Like you could reuse something like direct attached storage, or commission in a NAS, if you will. But now, AZ, if I look at this over time, what it has grown into, I mean, it is not only an abstraction engine, it's an automation engine. You could go so far as to say it's really data lifecycle management. And sometimes some of us don't like some of these terms if you've been around the industry a while. But if I go back to this, maybe let's take everyone through what's actually happening here. Why are there 3 tiers, and what are these locks all about?
Oh, well, the locks is a separate story, but okay, let's start from tiers, because essentially, like you mentioned, back in the days, it was just one tier, performance tier. It wasn't even, a performance tier per se. It was just a bunch of storages, bunch of repositories, and nowadays we call them simple repositories. But essentially, it could have been anything, like a folder on a directly attached server, or the network share or something. And then so people were adding those kind of folders or simple repositories into BNR console, and then they were using them. But then apparently, within time, it got more difficult for them to manage those folders and simple repositories. And then we were thinking, what if instead of having the bunch of those folders, repositories that people have to add every week, probably some of the organizations. So what if instead of that, there will be just one backup repository, which we call scale out backup repository, and essentially all the jobs that you or people, customers configuring in BNR console, that would be pointing to just one repository, and then there would be logic inside of this repository, which would decide on which actual folder or which actual simple repository the data would go. And we have a bunch of policies over there, like data locality and performance, because it's a logic, and we have to decide on what's going to be with the data whenever it lands the disk or the space in the data center. And then it provided a lot of simplicity. It provided a lot of ease of management. And then we realized, okay, it's not just it. We could offload data. We could move it to some other things and some other types of storages. For example, cloud. And cloud is, it was becoming popular. It was becoming one of them. And then we came up with the kind of the tiering experience, with adding capacity tier and archive tier, and essentially being able to age out data whenever it needs to. So I think it's really intelligent ways for us to leverage that, the data offload and to manage the data life cycle. I know you don't like this term, but I have to bring it up.
No, that's great. And I do see we have a question from, I think it's Waldemar, who essentially, if I net it out, he's asking about KVM. What I would tell you, we can't pre-announce anything. However, it's reasonable to assume we're always working on expanding out additional platforms, whether that's a hypervisor, whether it's a SaaS-based application, whether that's an on-prem application. So a little bit of a teaser to watch this space, but you'll see more coming in the next, I'll call it, handful of months as it relates to KVM overall. But going back to what you just mentioned, AZ, what I like about this abstraction capability is, what's in it for, the administrator, right? What's in it for someone that's just whose company is utilizing Veeam? And it goes back to offering more choice, especially right now, being able to reuse infrastructure you have on that performance tier, or naturally, if you're in a position to be able to buy hardware refresh, update your components, absolutely great. We can introduce Flash into that, or we can reuse an existing storage array if you just need more capacity but need to control expenses. But it's that end-to-end automation that I like, AZ, where through policy, we can define upfront at the moment we capture data versus after the fact, someone having to go and take action.
And then I have to mention another two things, because I think it's really important here, and it allows us to better tell this story, because it also aligned with data retention. And so, the concept of data retention, so we have this scale out backup repository, and it doesn't mean the data has to come all the way down to archive tier. It doesn't have to be this way. But for example, if you have a backup job with retention of 7 days, it might be just worth to keep all the data on the performance tier, and so we will do that for you. So we'd not bother uploading the data somewhere else to the cloud. But then if you have that set of data which needs to be GFS specific, with weekly backups going backwards into last 5 years, for example, and if you have this requirement, you would be struggling to find the proper way to achieve that. And with this technology, in particular, scale out backup repository, it would be as easy as this, because whenever you're setting up scale out backup repository, you're just selecting those things, adding all of the capacity and archive tier, and then creating a backup job, specifying the requirements that you have for retention, and voila, it's done. It's going to be working as expected.
And it's hard to read maybe on there, but we have these 3 little Veeam ready icons. And I think that's important too, Andrew, to mention, because Veeam exists in an ecosystem of partners. And so there are partnership programs around dozens and dozens and dozens of repository partners, meaning where we write this data to, of object storage partners or object storage partners that offer immutability. And that's what these locks represent, are various ways through programmatically through Veeam and our integration with now going on about 25 different providers that honor this kind of capability. So I know we've got, I think, another map update, if I am not mistaken. A few more countries have come in. In fact, several more countries have come in since we last took a look. We've got in Europe quite a few here. We've got, let's see, UK, of course, Poland, Czechoslovakia, India is in the corner there. We've got Russia, of course, Syria, Spain, let's see, fair amount of France, if I didn't mention that. And we've got South America.
South Africa.
South Africa. Yeah, good catch on your part. We've got the Middle East. I also do have South America coming in, and more states in the United States as well. Do have a question. Maybe I'll actually hit this question to you, Andrew. Question from Robert. I just upgraded part of our backup infrastructure to version 11 this very day, today. I'm interested in configuring archive tier. Can you elaborate on this and maybe tell us a little bit about how that would behave, as this is a new feature?
Okay, yeah, it is a new feature, but essentially it's baked out in the existing one in Scale-Out Backup repository. So if you're completing an upgrade from previous versions that we had, then it would be kind of a natural for you to go to Scale-Out Backup repository settings and to see on a capacity tier whether you have it enabled. And so if you have it enabled for either Amazon or Azure, so there would be a new option for you unlocked to have an archive tier, because essentially it will happen inside of the buckets or inside of the containers corresponding that you have in those clouds. And then it would be easy for you to kind of to enable this archive tier functionality within existing Scale-Out Backup repository settings. So you just go there to the settings and to see new options available for you if you're using Amazon or Azure.
Excellent. And I think it's worth now switching gears, still on cloud, of course, but talking about the cloud native capabilities. I think we've got a slide on this, but maybe talk through that as well.
Oh, yeah, right. This is the stuff that gets me excited, because I was, I was trying to think what makes us different from like other organizations or other vendors out there in the market. And essentially, I like our hybrid story. And it's not just our hybrid story. It's what our customers tells us, because they using their own data centers, and they're using cloud, and it's all the hybrid environment that they have. But then essentially some of them are just, let's say, new companies, startups, and they were born in the cloud. And so they don't need like any other solutions rather than just cloud solutions. And they like our Veeam backup for public cloud portfolio, because we have 3 of the products for 3 major clouds, for AWS, for Azure, and for GCP. And I like them because they provide a standalone way of protecting the data by calling the cloud APIs and by leveraging kind of the layers. And I call them 3 different layers because I believe it's a proper representation of data protection that we have there. And the first layer of protection is to essentially to create a snapshot, whether it's virtual machine or the EC2 instance or the VM instance in Google Cloud. And so to create a snapshot of that and then have it along with the original data with virtual machine or public instance or stuff like that. And then we could extract the data and, compile it into the backup format that we know. So can essentially to compile a backup file and to put it into the object storage in the same cloud. So there would be no charges for, data movement or anything. But then it would be there for long-term retention because the cost would be much more appealing, I would say. And then it would be there. So it's kind of separated from the production. And the third layer of protection is essentially to bring the data on-prem should the customer have this requirement. And so we have the a relatively new functionality in Veeam Backup and Application. It's called external repository. And so whenever you're operating with those like cloud native products, as we call them, so there would be a possibility for you to kind of to make the integrated solution coming from Veeam Backup and Application and Veeam Backup for Public Cloud by leveraging the external repositories. In some of the our Veeam Backup for Public Cloud solutions, they're going to be even further integrated in Veeam Backup and Application. So I really like this kind of a layered approach, and data, it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be all the way through 1, 2, 3. It could be just one, or it could be 1, 2, or it could be 1, 2, 3 if you need to bring the data to on-premises. And I really like this kind of flexibility that we offer there and protection that we provide.
Yeah, I like that too, because essentially what that says is any one of our cloud native products, whether it's our protection for AWS, Azure, more recently GCP, I'll throw in the Microsoft 365 protection into that same conversation. And in the very near future, our Kasten or Kubernetes management solution as well. I think of these as blades that can stand alone by themselves. To your point, if you're a brand new business, if this was the AZ and DR company, we might not have anything more on-prem than just our laptops and maybe a printer, but our services, our compute, it might be taking place elsewhere. So if one of us was administering that, that's all we know. Maybe it's just being backup for AWS is but one example. However, if you're a large organization or have unique requirements, a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud approach such that you want a platform that's on-prem as well as any one of these blades into the cloud, and we're not dictating that you have to have all of these things. To your point, choose 1, 2, or 3 in this diagram that appeals to you at that point in time. So it goes back to the flexibility in some ways. And if I do a hard transition, flexibility is how I think about this next slide, which you've been putting together now for a number of years. I think on this slide about the number of ways to recover, if I go back, I feel like there was once, I think 57 was one long ago. There might have even been a slide prior to that, lower than 57 at one point.
Yeah, so I think I started it like 6 years ago, and the first draft of the document, of the image that I had, it had like 42.
Okay,
so
42.
Yeah, two times less scenarios. Yeah. And then we've been adding more functionality. We've been adding more like explorers to the whole portfolio of Veeam Backup and Application. And Veeam Backup and Application, essentially, it's it's kind of a beast if you think about it, with all the, all the platform services it has these days, with all the like flexibility in terms of recovery and the ways how one can achieve the data recovery in the in the production that they have. And obviously we have to come up with some like classification categories and thinking about organizing it in a better way, because we used to have like the separate icon for all the recovery scenarios, and I try to even think about kind of promote the certain scenarios because they were not that popular. And then I just kind of, I have to admit, I give up on that. And now I'm just having a bunch of those scenarios listed here and categorized. And then I would advise, should you have like, for example, cloud products over there, or cloud infrastructure in the mix, it would be nice to try the recovery to Azure or recovery to AWS, for example, or having the Veeam Cloud Connect as is another case, and the leveraging service provider infrastructure is one of the DR sites for you and for your company. And so that would be awesome. I don't know, Dave, what is your preferred category in here? What is the feature that you get excited about the most?
Oh, I'm going to go to tape, because Veeam natively supports tape LTO3 and above, meaning doesn't require a third party. But, I said that half jokingly, but only half jokingly, because obviously customers have made an investment in physical tape and we want to honor that. And now, unfortunately, with cyber threats, tape is getting of more interest to some organizations. But here's the real key in my mind before we begin to wind down. I look at a number like 91. The point isn't, oh my gosh, I have to go understand 91 different things in order to do a recovery from Veeam. That's not the case at all. What is the real takeaway is, regardless of my workload, regardless of what kind of administrator I am. Maybe I'm the SQL Server administrator. Maybe I look after OneDrive, or maybe I'm focused on cloud, or maybe I actually literally am that person on tape and I want to get back one file. We're taking it off of air gap because we just got an emergency. Any one of these things, our goal with all this is to make sure we can give back data in a way that that person, that role, or in a way that's most appropriate for the request, meaning I want a file or I want a calendar appointment within maybe O365 or something specific. That's why we have all these different interfaces. Again, I just go back to choice, flexibility, making sure we can deliver data in a way that people want to consume it, but do that facilitates them.
Mm-hmm. I would, if you asked me, like, my preferred choice, I would always pick instant recovery, because I'm thinking, if you're a Veeam backup and replication administrator, there is a good chance that you have some virtual infrastructure in place, which means that you have either VMware or Hyper-V cluster somewhere, or it could be even one of the servers over there. But anyways, and if I need to recover any of the data out there, so that would be instant VM recovery, or like I'm in doubt, I don't know what to select, and probably there's many options that we provide. So instant VM recovery, and then you're spinning up the VM right from the backup, compressed, deduplicated file, and so it just instantly runs out there for you, and so it provides you with a graphical user interface, or if you're like using Linux console. But anyways, the data is accessible within seconds, and I think it could answer many of the specific cases that one have there. So I would always pick that.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. And so now as we wind down, I want to give a shout out to 4 things coming up. Our colleagues, David and Dimitri, this Friday at this same time, wherever you're tuning in from, this Friday, our time at least, in the US and in most of Europe, we'll be talking about all things cloud, and we'll have some demonstrations taking place as well. But I want to toss it over to you, Andrew, because we have our premiere event that's coming up shortly, and you've been involved in every single one of those, I believe.
Yeah, since the very beginning. And I do remember the first one we had in Las Vegas in 2014. It would have been awesome to kind of come back to Las Vegas if we had it and an opportunity. But anyways, while we have this opportunity to have those virtual events, I would definitely recommend to visit one that we'll have at the end of May. And we're gearing up. In fact, we just had a call like a couple of hours ago about the content that we're preparing for the event. And I can tell you that some of it's pretty exciting, because obviously it's going to be filled up with the industry insights, with all the best practices that we have, with specific things that you can leverage better existing Veeam products and Veeam functionality. And I would definitely recommend you to see me and all of my colleagues. Dave is going to be there as awesome as always. So definitely don't miss it, and come to our VeeamON 2021, and I hope to see you there.
Brilliant. And speaking of events, we'll also have in early May a Cloud Native Data Management Day that's going to be co-resident actually with KubeCon as well, meaning the virtual events of KubeCon and Cloud Native taking place. This special Cloud Native Data Management Day, you can kind of see the tracks here. There's a community track, there's a technical track, there's industry tracks. This is a no-charge event if you're already signed up for these others. That'll begin on May 4th. Kasten, a Veeam company, will be there. There'll be other sponsors as well, but a great way to learn more about Kubernetes space. The last thing that I'll tease up is a white paper I'll selfishly plug that we've issued from Veeam. It's a best practices to modernizing your backup and recovery. We go through 12. So think of it like version 11 with one more to grow on, Andrew. So that's how we get to 12. 12 different best practices. And regardless of whether or not you're a Veeam customer, I encourage you to double click on that. We've got a shorter URL that I think is in chat as well. Before we sign off, one quick question from Robert, who, if I net that out, says, there's several different consoles I use now with Veeam. Do you have plans to collapse that in the future? Really quickly, Robert, Yes, however, we're not going to try to take away consoles for people that like that specific interface, somewhat like our 91 ways to recover. We don't want to take away something or create a situation where someone has to learn something new. But you'll see us increasingly merge our presentation technology into a new kind of format, leveraging the latest kind of presentation technologies and toolkits. So stay tuned for that. Speaking of stay tuned, be sure to check out this Friday's LinkedIn live stream. Be sure to check out Veeam on. Andrew's going to be there. Be sure to check out the Cloud Native Data Management and this white paper. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Dave. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you on the next live stream. Bye for now.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.